So how do we fix the world economic system?
The answer is probably not Bitcoin, but the answer.
I appreciate that you actually tried to answer that. Oh, that is horrible.
So actually, one floor punk is more than one floor punk. You think you have 1 out of 10,000 scarcity, but you have 1 of 9,996.
Well, what about artwork in the real world? At least you have the painting, and that is such bullshit of an argument. It is a terrible, terrible argument.
It's a very like 75 IQ type argument. Yeah.
What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and welcome back for another episode of the Doug Polk Podcast. Today, we are joined by Mike McDonald. Some of you might know him as Timex, a man who's been in a lot of the streets I have been as well, of course, with a background in poker, and then also started Poker Shares just a few years ago, specializes in gambling, and now a recent move over to crypto. Over the last few years, he has spent most of his time and energy there. Mike is an advocate for CryptoPunks. So we're going to be talking a lot about NFTs and punks, as well as DeFi and the market as a whole. So this is a good way to dip your toes in and start to learn about the NFT world, as well as a little bit of a deep dive on CryptoPunks, why they're so valuable, and some things you might not have thought about when considering investing into that area. Before we jump into that discussion on just what it takes to be an A-plus capitalist in today's society, I want to quickly ask you to subscribe and follow this podcast on the relative platforms. We are on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you get your podcast, you're going to be able to find us. And of course, we're also on YouTube as well at Doug Polk Podcast. I'll be posting an episode just about every week, although some weeks might do a little bit more often. If you want to make sure you do not miss those episodes, you need to subscribe and follow so you get those updates when they go live. Also, we continue the process of upgrading the mic and video camera and sound padding and everything to do with this podcast. Every day it gets just a bit better. We now have the 4K camera in full action over on YouTube, and the audio should be sounding a bit better as well. I got a couple changes I'm going to make that should make that quality extremely clear, hoping to have that in the near future as well. Also, we do have a podcast with Phil Hellmuth coming up in the near future, so stay tuned for that one. It's always fun getting a chance to talk to Phil. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into our talk today with Mike McDonald. All right, everyone, we are now welcoming to the podcast I'd say maybe a friend, dare I say good friend of mine, someone that I've known for a long time in the poker world, the crypto world as well. One of the good guys, Mike McDonald. Thank you for joining us here on the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So we have a bunch of different topics that we want to jump into, but I want to start off with, I was thinking about this right when you hopped on. Do you remember when we were in Australia and we had to go into the casino main floor, and it was me, you, and Caitlin, my girlfriend at the time, or now fiance, and we tried to go on the floor, and they looked at all three of us and they asked you for ID, and you didn't have your passport, and they had to, they told you, no dice today. You're going to have to go back and get some ID to get out here.
I forgot about that, and I was probably 26 at the time or something. You know, I think this would have been 2014 or 2015, and I think that we were like final table of the $100,000 tournament or something like that.
Yes, we were at the final table. It was the 250K.
Drinking age is 18 there. Pardon me?
It was the 250K, I think.
Okay, it was the 250K, even worse. Yeah, drinking age is fucking 18 there, and they're over here thinking, I mean, you know, now I've got enough gray hairs and whatnot up here. I'm sure that I don't get much of that anymore, but yeah, it was, I had forgotten about that. That was rough.
You do look very young, you look very young. And I think that's something that's gonna, it's going to be a blessing as you get older, right? But it's funny being at the final table of a tournament where the buy-in is $250,000 and the age to drink is 18, and they just won't let you out here. Nope, you're gonna have to head back and get it. That was some good times.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to lately? What's new with you? What's happening?
Honestly, like not that much. You know, there's often kind of, you know, something you know, some more going on. You know, I'm just out visiting my parents in Ontario right now. I've been spending most of the pandemic out at my place in Alberta. You know, Canada's gradually kind of catching up to the times with COVID opening up and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know, not a lot new on my end, to be honest. It's been a bit of kind of you know, a bit of a lull with both, you know, crypto and gambling and whatnot, where, you know, with the crypto bull market, the last sort of, you know, 9 months or whatnot have been so insane that I'm kind of just relaxing, I suppose. Haven't been doing as much as I'm normally doing.
What are some of your general thoughts on the state of the market as it is today? And obviously, you're someone who likes to take stances on things and put your opinion out there. And I actually really like hearing what you have to say, because I think that you put a lot of thought into what you believe in, and the words that you choose and the takes that you have. I do think you've been a little more on the bear side of things. If I had to just pick bull or bear, I'd say you've been a little more bearish on those with where the market is at right now, and where we're headed. Although I do see some occasional signs of life. Where would you describe, what would you describe yourself as today? Where do you think we're headed, and what's your opinion on the market as a whole?
Yeah, I would say I'm kind of, overall sort of neutral with a slightly bearish lean. I've sort of felt like as soon as we got into kind of the high 20s, mid December, late December, it just felt to me like we're in this euphoric, we're in this euphoric time where, whether we rally to 40K or 400K, I have no idea. And I want to be like, long that, but I don't, whatever price we get to, it feels like will be a bit ridiculous at the top. And, it felt like everything I was seeing in crypto, the amount of things going on with TikTok and Elon and the dog coins, and the APYs in DeFi, and and copy paste being worth billions of dollars. It all felt so unhealthy to me for so long. And it's you'll see these things. Um, Countries are adopting Bitcoin as their currency and market dominance is dropping, or just it all felt like I was in crazy town for a while, where now I feel like it just feels more healthy, I suppose, where we've seen a lot of DeFi projects lower their TVL, lower their APYs, kind of, I think people who I basically felt like for a while, people who own Ethereum or Solana or Matic or any of these kind of smart contract platforms, I feel like they don't, most of the people who are large holders, I feel almost can't sell because the APYs are too good to sell. So it felt to me like we were in this environment where the pricing of a lot of these projects was, just kind of fake, and no one's even considered selling. And at some point, everyone will consider selling. And I feel like now we've had 2 months of, if people have actually reflected on the cycle, be like, okay, I need to, cash some out to buy a house or buy a car or pay off my student debt, or whatever it is. I think and the APYs aren't so high right now that people will just blindly buy anything just to chase those APYs, to where I feel like. And then the other thing I think is that so many eyes have been on DeFi and on smart contract platforms, that I think it's dragged the whole market up. Where even though smart contracts on Bitcoin are a meme and don't really do anything, I think that Bitcoin itself has been a benefactor of the success of DeFi. And so it's just kind of led to me being somewhat bearish for several months there. And now just kind of seeing when it got down to 28.8 or whatever the low was, it wasn't some crazy wick, which kind of showed there wasn't a ton of leverage in the system, and then sort of slow climbed from them there. It's just kind of, I feel like I'm kind of slightly bullish lean at 30, slightly bearish lean at 40, kind of, it just feels like we're at like a real price for the first time, since they stormed the Capitol, basically. So, I'm, long term, I'm super bullish on this space, but right now I kind of have just a more neutral view, I guess.
The DeFi space is interesting, what its effect on the value of different currencies. It's interesting to watch that. And when you talk about the tokens like Matic as an example, a layer 2 solution for ETH, I remember tweeting about this and saying, I really like using Matic for farming because the fees are outrageously low. I think I had 0.1 Matic and it lasted me my entire time farming on Polygon. It never moved. You just transfer every day, no change in how much you have, and it's 10 cents. That's
Yeah.
obviously great. But the question really is, when does the music stop for these rewards tokens? And when you talk about the APYs for farming them, you look at Matic and you look at what you could make farming Matic. You think, oh wow, I could get 50 to 100% APY farming this token. But when the music stops, it's not worth anything, or it's worth very little. And so your 100%, it doesn't matter, because the asset that you're holding is just not valuable enough to make up the difference. And I think that there's a couple of different strategies with farming that you kind of have to make a core philosophical statement on what you believe in, which is, A, these tokens are fucking nonsense and this is going to end. and so I'm not going to be long these tokens, or B, bring on the 108% APY. This baby can go on for a long time. And of course, there's going to be a middle ground, right? Some people, and I'll even admit there are tokens that I farm that I think are nonsense. I farm a little bit of cake as an example, right? Just because the auto
Yeah.
cake is so good. It's have a little taste of cake, you know. And do I believe in cake? No, I don't think that it's the future of tech. I don't think that cake is going to be a huge player in the market in the future. But at the same time, if assets become big enough, the market does tend to kind of follow the same path, right? Or the same, basically the currencies tend to follow the market and their value. When everything goes up, cake tends to go up. Maybe it's not going to go up as much as ETH or whatever, but it still tends to follow that path. So there are exceptions where I am farming some occasional stuff like that. But overall, my general stance has been, this is not going to be something that long term that we can expect to be able to maintain these values. And the counter to that is that in a lot of cases, a lot of examples, they kind of have managed to maintain their value. At least, obviously, everything's down a lot over the last 2-3 months, but relative to Bitcoin and ETH, a lot of these actually have not done too badly. I think Bitcoin dominance has risen slightly, so they probably done a little bit worse than Bitcoin. But the point is, they're not getting absolutely destroyed a la 2018 drop, right? Is a little bit different. Do you see some parallels this time around with what's happening with the altcoin market versus 2018, or would you say they're a bit different? What are your thoughts on that?
So what I think is really like what I think is almost more dangerous about this market than the 2018 market is that, so in the 2018 market, it's like, you're buying some shitty coin because allegedly the Korean government is going to adopt it as its currency. It's like you're investing.
Shout out to ICX or
yeah. You're investing in something that like you don't understand, but at least no one else understands it either. And it's like, you're investing in like a promise that's almost inevitably going to get broken. But in a lot of ways, I feel an environment where everyone's investing in something they don't understand and it's overpriced is more dangerous than everyone investing in something that they all think they do understand and it's overpriced. So if you look at a lot of these DeFi protocols, you see how large the volume is, but the volume is only there because predominantly only there because people allow themselves to get armed and take losses, but those losses are less substantial than the gains they get from farming. So it's like the revenue they quote, they say whatever, Sushi's making $1 million a day in revenue, but the people who are using it are taking or they're taking a $1 million loss in exchange for $3 million in farming rewards, so they're making 2 million. So it's really a negative 2 million revenue. Basically Sushi buyers are net paying money to the people that they think is their revenue. So to me, I feel like everyone kind of looks at these and thinks, oh wow, that's good numbers. Oh, that's a good PE ratio. Like that's better than investing in a tech stock. Okay, I'll buy this. Where they don't really pay that much attention to where the revenue is coming from and how that can be so liquid. Where these protocols can work the exact same whether there's $10 billion in them or $10,000 in them. And if there's $10,000 in them, there's also going to be a 99.9999% revenue decrease, to where I think that everyone feels more secure in 2021 than they did in 2018 because there is like an income statement they can look at, but that income, when the income statement goes up, they're like, oh, this is a good investment. And when the income goes down, they, rather than think, oh, this is a bad investment, applying the same logic they did, they can be like, oh, that's crypto, ups, downs, who knows which way it's going. To where I think that for the losers of 2021, I think they'll be much worse than the losers of 2018. Like this idea of like bad things dropping 96%. It's like here, it's like bad things drop 99.9% is what I think a lot of these protocols will hit a point where there's no reason to put a single dollar into them, basically. And I think that we've seen we've seen the good stuff drop 70, 75%, the bad stuff drop 85%. But I really think that I think we're a long way from the bottom, basically, where I think that yeah, I don't know. I think that there's yeah, basically I like a false promise more than I like, like a false income statement, I suppose, kind of thing.
So when you're talking about sushi, are you talking about specifically buying sushi tokens?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'm
Okay.
basically talking about the people who, I think it's talking about people who kind of, want to have ownership of these protocols, basically.
Right. And so what are your thoughts on that? Because there's obviously a difference between owning equity and owning a token. And in some cases, it's a little bit more obvious. And I think that the most obvious one is, well, there's a few kind of obvious cases, but I think FTT is a currency that is kind of obviously different than equity. There are equity owners in FTX. The token does not represent equity. So you have an example there. You have another kind of interesting one with Uniswap, where okay, so apparently at some point there's going to be some kind of rewards, and I think a lot of people are speculating that when this is rolled out, that they'll be able to capitalize on it by owning supply of Uni. But at the same time, we're looking at a currency that's, I don't know, was it ranked 12th in the world, and right now, what can you use them for? You can vote on proposals at Uniswap. That is not nearly the same as owning equity, and so when I look at these values, I think sushi is maybe an example where it more directly correlates to it. But what are your thoughts on these governance tokens and their speculative values compared to maybe what they're actually offering?
Yeah, so I think that as the more time that's passed, the more bullish I am on Uni's approach, I suppose. So I guess I would put Uni and FTT in a different category. I'll talk a little
Fair.
bit about FTT, but I'm by no means an expert. I think that I think basically the way that I would look at trades like that um, is when crypto's in a bull market, it's easy to think revenue will be high for forever, and when crypto's in a bear market, it's easy to think revenue will be low for forever. Where it's just like at FTTs and being or FTXs and Binance's revenues have been so insane for the last 7 or 8 months, kind of thing. And I think that that's not to say, I mean, if Bitcoin rallies to 200K, they'll be even higher, but it's kind of like it's almost like a levered short-term bet on how crypto will do, I suppose, where I don't think whether Bitcoin is 50K tomorrow or 30K tomorrow has that much of an effect on their revenue in 20 years, kind of thing, but which is kind of what these things should matter for. But it's very relevant to what their revenue will be in 1 month or 3 months, kind of thing. Where when Bitcoin's at all-time highs, everyone thinks they're a professional trader, and when everyone gets wrecked, everyone just hodls, kind of thing. So it's very it's weird, people looking at their kind of revenue numbers in the most raging bull market of all time, and thinking that that will be indicative of what will continue happening in the future. And then the other comment on FTT is just that they've said that once half the FTT is burned, they'll like change the mechanism or something. Whereas like I don't think they've been visible. I don't think they've been vocal about like, I think what it is 33% of either their revenue or their profit goes to burning FTT until they've burned half of all FTT. And so
Okay.
so it's like so once half is, I don't think they've said what the plan is. Maybe they keep burning. I don't know. But it is a weird dynamic where it's a little bit if I just don't know what the business is going to do, and knowing they're raising equity is a conflict of interest. But anyway, so that's
What are your actually? Let's just take a moment to talk about that. What were your
sure.
thoughts when you saw? So first off, what do you think about FTX's campaign strategy of buy everything, and
Yeah.
then following it up with doing a round of raising funds kind of directly afterwards? What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on the strategy? Do you have any take on what that kind of means? Because it's sort of weird to me to spend so aggressively in such large amounts of money and then do a round of raising right after. It just feels a little bit strange.
Well, so I guess the one thing is I know CZ and Binance were one of their early investors and aren't invested anymore. So it's totally possible this was just to buy out CZ. Like like I don't know which shares were and weren't being purchased, but I know that Sam has mentioned that Binance is no longer an investor in them.
I heard that, yeah.
Which so it may have literally been like $0 into their pocket, in which case like it's kind of a moot point, kind of thing. But regardless,
Makes
I,
sense.
I would I would sort of say that like I kind of view myself as like an A minus capitalist, where like being an A plus capitalist, I kind of feel like scummy about it, even though I know they're playing the game better than I do or whatnot. Where it's just, I kind of just feel like the whole market is one insane bubble where, like I think I just have like a blue collar approach where it's like I like making money in the sense of like, oh, I had $400 and now I have 450. Like I like the idea of like find something that can go and make me money. Whereas I feel like what public markets allow you to do is you try to think of like, hey, what's something I can do that can build me valuation so that my shares are valued more by the market. And I think that the strategies that people employ that don't earn dollars but do earn valuation always make me cringe quite a little bit, where it's just like, and I think like if I look at that, you invest $200 million in the MLB, I'm looking at thinking, can I get $200 million of revenue out of that? And then, the question I ask myself is like an A minus capitalist is like, okay, well, what revenue can I get? And then maybe I say yes, maybe I say no. But I feel like if you're like an A plus capitalist, you think, can I pump my valuation by over 200 million by doing that? And the answer is almost definitely yes, kind of thing. And so I think this idea of like get your name out there, even if MLB brings in no customers, but it just like convinces your investing customers to have more faith in you or whatnot, and it doesn't change your revenue one bit, but it makes people buy FTT more, invest more in Serum, invest more in Solana, and just like make you feel like you're more important, and makes your followers think you're more powerful than you are. That can easily recoup all that money in the first place. So I guess sort of my answer is that like it's probably a good decision to be throwing this money everywhere, but it's also a decision that if the reasons it's a good decision are kind of the type of decisions I don't like making, I suppose. It's like I like just looking in my wallet and seeing more money than looking and being like, oh, like I know how to manipulate my believers into pumping my valuations is how I feel. And this is not just an attack on FTX. This is like public markets in general, and how the CEO of any publicly traded company would act, I guess. And that's just what being an A plus capitalist is, I think.
So you need to be more like the Elon Musks of the world, basically, to get that A plus capitalist.
No, it's like
that's 5-star rating.
Yeah, like it's just like if you were I think it's pretty likely like every one of our broke friends has like made more dollars than Elon Musk has in his life. Like I don't know if Elon Musk has turned a profit across his businesses in his lifetime. Like I don't know if that answer is positive or negative, but it's reasonably likely he just hasn't net profited.
Well, PayPal, right?
Yeah, but I don't, was PayPal cash flow positive when he sold it? Like I don't know. Like I don't know. Even if he just got out with $10 billion, that doesn't mean it was it's probably cash flow positive now, but it's totally possible it wasn't.
This reminds me of a scene in the show Silicon Valley where they're talking about
free revenue
value, and they're talking the worst thing you can do is make money. You can't make. They're basically just saying absolutely do not make money, because that's when you have to actually come back down to earth, kind of. I forget exactly the line in there, but it's sort of like that. The moment you're making money, then people have to look at the money you're making and compare that. When you're not making money, who knows, right?
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, I think it's pretty likely, if I think it's reasonably likely that his businesses have net lost money. And if they have net made money, it's definitely under $10 billion. And the valuations are whatever, 700 billion or something like that. So it's such a, he like relative to valuations, the profit is like basically a rounding error compared to what his shit is worth, kind of thing. So to me, it just seems like, it's like I like, let's say you hop in a super high roller, you sell at 1.05 markup. The implication is like you can go make money in the tournament. But like, let's just say you found someone who is so good at networking, they could go like flip that into 1.1 markup or something.
You're saying, what if I, in theory, knew Phil Hellmuth, who, by the way, guys, will be coming on shortly. Might even be the next guest. The stage, no, but basically,
so like, let's just say you buy a share of you, and you only buy the share of you at 1.05, knowing that you can sell that share to someone else at 1.1 and buy you out and get that immediate flip or whatnot. It's like that. I feel like that's what people are doing in so many markets, is they're just kind of buying like the charismatic leader, knowing that the charismatic leader can make the price go up. And it doesn't matter if they can actually it doesn't matter if the company can make money if the traders can make money is sort of the approach people have. And I don't know, I think the whole world is crazy. But I mean, it's worked now for for decades kind of thing. And I guess it's just like, when I say it's crazy, it's more just like, I mean, it likely is the right approach. Get as much market share as you can, and that kind of actually goes back to the Uniswap point. Is that Uniswap, I think, is competing the way tech companies compete. It makes your service free, and I think with a DeFi protocol, I've tweeted about this a few times. There's three. Like, my belief is that there's three parties that matter, and you can cater to at most three of the parties, and the three parties that matter are, you want to make terms that are attractive for people who buy the token. You want to make terms that are attractive for people who are farming, to give them good revenue, and then you want terms that are attractive for people that are trading using the platform. So let's just say you increase the fees on the platform. You increase the fees, and now that should help get more revenue, or a higher percentage of revenue for holders, and then also for farmers it should get more revenue for them. But then for traders, it should give them a worse experience, because now they have to pay more to use the platform, so they can just go to a different platform. And with each of these three things, with any change you'd make is going to harm one or two of these three parties. And the Uniswap party, it hurts the governance token buyers and holders because they get no revenue. But basically, this idea of getting people who trust the platform to farm, and getting people who trust the platform to trade, and give them a fair environment, and like totally screwing over the holders in the short term to get adoption, to change, to give holders revenue in the future. Because the idea behind Uniswap is try to get a monopoly, or get enough branding that everyone feels favorably that they just default use Uniswap, even if the fees are too high. 3 years from now, the dream is that Uniswap can charge double the fees of everyone else, but people still use Uniswap because it's a name they know, a name they trust. There haven't been rugs, and that's kind of the path they're using, where they're like, hey, we're going to screw over our governance token holders in the short term to try to help them as much as possible by getting as much market share as possible. And so that's I think the approach they're using. And the longer I watch this, the more I used to not like that approach, but the more I look at it, the more I kind of do like that approach. And it is more in line with how capital markets exist, where it's just like, hey, let's just get as much attention, as much hype, as many people who think of our business positively as possible before we try to, as you say in Silicon Valley, earn revenue.
I think that while that does make some sense as a strategy, I think that this ecosystem is a lot sharper than most, where people are very price sensitive because it's just a number on a screen, right? You look at your fee. Let's just say, so Uniswap fees are 0.3%. Let's just say that you can find somewhere where it's 0.15%. I think that people can just do that so easily. And you're looking at a trade. Oh, I can save $100 by doing this site instead of this site. I'm going to use that one as long as I know that it's safe. And especially as these platforms like 1inch and Matcha and these other DBank has one as well. Basically, these platforms where they scan all of the exchanges to find you the best rate possible. I just have a hard time seeing in this space specifically being able to be, hey, we're Uniswap, you're getting a good fair trade, when there are so many other competitors that might have a better option for you. I'm not sure that I love that strategy, but I do get the idea of trying to build your brand and trying to compete. And Uniswap, I mean, they are the biggest decentralized exchange, right? So they have done a lot of things right. Obviously, they have some first mover stuff as well, but there are people that are going to try and compete with them. Obviously, sushi is the most direct example of that. And I think if they try and get a little bit carried away on their fee structure, then I think that will end up hurting them in the long run.
I'll add one point there, is that so the total amount of, like, if you look through one of those kind of routers that picks the place to go, they'll take the place that gives you the best deal when it comes to fees plus slippage. So what I think a Uniswap can do is that they can have higher fees but lower slippage. Like, let's say the end goal is that sushi, in 3 years, sushi charges 5 basis points, but down from the 30 they're charging now, and then Uniswap charges 10 basis points. But then Uniswap has enough higher liquidity that if you if you go and you do the 5 basis points swap, you're going to pay 40 basis points in slippage. Whereas if you do the 10 basis point swap, you're going to pay 20 basis points of slippage, let's say. So the fees plus slippage, if it's a more liquid platform, can still sum up to being the best trade while also giving more revenue to
Good point,
the holders. So I think that is like, that's kind of how I envision the competition will be, is that you attract enough people wanting to give liquidity there that even though you charge higher fees, it's still a cheaper trade. That's my one kind of interjection.
That makes sense. You need the depth in the trade as well, especially for the bigger positions. And I think if you're using decentralized exchanges, you're probably more likely to have bigger positions because what you're going to pay in gas would be kind of outrageous for small trades. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's get into what the main subject I want to talk about today, which is just NFTs and more specifically CryptoPunks, because I know you're a big is it a punk head? What do you call guys that are into punks? Crypto.
I think Heralibus calls them head collectors. I think.
Oh, right.
I think I'm a head collector, rare head collector. Yeah.
I saw that because that was actually quite the fiasco. Basically,
oh yeah,
Heralibus had as his profile head collector because someone wrote an article about CryptoPunks and called them heads. And
that people buy them. I think he even said that he collects rare heads. I think is what they say. Punk buyers collect rare heads,
which is, I mean, kind of true. And he put that as his profile. And then there was a bunch of drama at the Dallas Mavericks, which he also works at. And the GM got fired. And they thought that after he got fired, Heralibus put head collector, meaning that he got the GM fired. And I told this to Heralibus. I said, anytime I'm ever feeling bad about taking some heat online about something that I did and the community's angry at me, I'm going to go look at that thread of the things that they said about him, because it was brutal. And I was reading it, and you feel for people that, you feel for people when you know that this is not true. Well, and it's just every single comment is just pitchforks. We got to get this guy out of here. Just the meanest possible things you could think of. I'm sure House is doing fine, but it was funny seeing that whole mob mentality go down on something where you just want to say, hey, this isn't true, guys. But anyway, back to CryptoPunks. What was it that initially drew you to them, and why do you think that these are going to be so valuable in the future?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the thing that initially drew me to them was basically understanding that there is a thesis for why they're scarce, I guess, where I think that I've told a few people this, where I think when a lot of people think about NFTs, they kind of confuse and I was guilty of this until this year. I think they sort of confuse, is this an interesting two questions? Is this an interesting innovation? Question one. And question two, will this token go up in price? And I think a lot of people who think no for the second question, by definition, think that means no for the first question as well. They think that this being the provable ownership of a digital asset, they think that is going to go, if they're not good investments, so then they think they're not good innovation. But I think at the end of the day, in the same way, I think it's a weird position to think that fungible tokens are interesting and non-fungible tokens are categorically disinteresting. It just seems really stupid to me that I think that anyone who thinks that that various assets on blockchains are interesting, but if assets on blockchains are not all identical, they're by definition disinteresting. I think that anyone who has that is doing some crazy mental gymnastics. So I think that the reach of thinking, okay, NFTs can at least be interesting is a reach that everyone, I think, should be able to make. I think you can only not make that reach if you believe that artwork is only good for firewood or something like that, and baseball cards are only good to write on if you run out of paper, or I think if you can accept that any sort of collectible that makes someone happy can be valued. A digital collectible that makes someone happy being valued, I think is I think not making that reach of faith, I think is very hypocritical. And then to the question of whether they'll go up in value, I guess to me, I think that I think that basically more and more people, like I don't think many people in 2019 thought, oh, NFTs are interesting with a good thesis, and now in 2021 they don't. I think it's kind of like even people who sold their Bitcoin in 2012, I think they can still understand the thesis of why they originally had Bitcoin and things. And I think it's kind of one of those things. It's a valve that starts closed that, once it opens, it doesn't close again. And so I don't think many people who believed in NFTs will stop believing in NFTs. And I think that more and more people will start. And believing doesn't necessarily mean investing. I believe art can be valued, but I don't own any rare artwork or anything like that. Or I've some things that I think look nice, but none of them carried a high cost. And I don't think thinking art can be valued means I should by definition own any. And I don't think that believing NFTs can be valued means you should go buy NFTs. And then I think they're one of the toughest assets to price. It's totally based on sentiment, and we're in this raging bull market to where I think an idea of just blindly close your eyes and don't buy NFTs until a bear market is probably at least a B+ strategy kind of thing. It's certainly I think people can some of these things can grow so highly illiquid when communities aren't doing well. But I think the main, anyways, the point, I think the thesis I like behind CryptoPunks is that there's a very small number of NFTs that kind of predate the ERC 721 standard. And I think that, Ethereum being the first on Ethereum, I think they say this thing made by a guy, Kevin McCoy, which recently sold for like $1 million, that was created on Namecoin in like 2012 or 2013, was the first NFT or whatnot. But Namecoin, the chain, I think died. So like there are these old school NFTs. I think they all have a thesis. But say you take something like Ethereum, the first one that was built on Ethereum. It's sort of, if people aren't familiar with it, it's kind of like collecting hexagons on a Settlers of Catan board. Like you can be like, hey, look, mom, like I own this hexagon over here, cost me 20 ETH or whatnot. But you put on that hexagon and it has a set geographical location, but they kind of look like the other hexagons. There's maybe 3 different colors or something like that. Yours is a unique one, but it's sort of, if you make that, you're not a lot of people are making those hexagons their Twitter picture. And, I think there were a few things of that nature that happened. And then Punks was the first one that really built a community sort of mid 2017, about 4 or 5 months before CryptoKitties, where that was actually the project that kind of inspired the ERC 721 standard that other NFTs are built on. And I think there's just something to be said that everything that predates that is a little bit of like a historical relic or something, where it was, it's like a thing that was built, that was deemed interesting enough that they had to build the technology to make this easier going forth. And so I think as NFTs are adopted and used by more and more people, I think that going to something like Punks, also something like Ethereum as well, I think has such a logical thesis for why more and more people will become interested in them over time.
I think the first point where you talked about fungible versus non-fungible, it is funny to me when I see people get really hardcore on one item, because let me give you the example I have in mind. Bitcoin maximalists versus non-Bitcoin maximalists in the crypto space. With Bitcoin maximalists, it's a little bit funny to me because, okay, you were willing to take this leap into a totally new world, but then you hardcore believe anything past that in the same space, scam. Okay. So you're willing to take your money and put it really, really take a big jump here, but then you're not willing to look at ETH. You're not willing to look at anything else other than Bitcoin. So it reminds me that a little bit, in that it is kind of funny to say these value, those no value, when the reality is there's going to be value in many different things. And we've seen this happen over the last several years, where more and more interesting projects are going to pop up, more and more interesting ideas. And as for NFTs specifically, I think that just kind of going back to the basic, why are these valuable? It's really a combination of scarcity and significance. And you need both of those. The scarcity is what makes it, oh, this is mine. There are not many of these out here, or there are X number of these out there in the world. And the most valuable ones, usually it's one. And I own it. I own this very scarce resource. And then the other important aspect is, what does it signify? What what does owning this mean, right? The guy who has the first NFT, I own the first ever NFT. That's very significant. So it's the blend of those two things that creates the value. And when we compare that to real world artwork, because that's always the comparison that is made with people in the real world who are not fans of NFTs. And let's get this straight. I'm not some huge NFT guy. I don't own any NFTs. I'm not a huge NFT guy. But when these comparisons brought up, they say, well, what about artwork in the real world? At least you have the painting. And that is such bullshit of an argument. It is a terrible, terrible argument.
It's a very like 75 IQ type argument. Yeah.
But I hear them all the time because
all the time.
I could print
it's really funny.
Yeah, I could print out the Mona Lisa. I could put it on my wall. I don't own the Mona Lisa, right? It's not that I have the real Mona Lisa. I have a fake Mona Lisa and I get the same exact viewing experience as the real. Maybe the paint brushes are a little bit different. I'm sure I could hire someone and I could have a very good
hire
copy.
A fantastic painting to make something that's arguably a better looking version of the Mona Lisa for like $4,000 or something like that. That, you know, very few people could tell the difference. Or if you wanted, make one that just looks a little better. You know,
sure. Maybe it's clear she's smiling. Maybe it's clear she's not. I don't know. That could be something that we look at. But the point is, it's not the fact that the painting looks like that and you can hang it on your wall that makes the Mona Lisa valuable. It's its significance. And that's what you're buying with NFTs. You don't need to own the rights to the face. I hear people talk about that. This is just such noob stuff. You own the actual thing and there's only one, and its significance is important. And so I think when I first heard about NFTs, it immediately made sense to me. And immediately I thought, this is not stuff that I would want to buy, but it makes sense to me that these are going to be valuable. And I think that with punks, it does have this interesting intersection where obviously it's on Ethereum, so it's on the biggest platform where you can have NFTs, and then also it's got this social status element where it's kind of nice. I like the point you brought up. You can't make a hexagon your profile picture. Well, you can, but what is that, right?
People aren't swiping right for the hexagon.
Exactly. So you can make it your avatar. It gives you a little bit of an identity, and it also kind of makes a statement. And they're cool. I mean, I've seen all you guys having all the CryptoPunks on there, and I've definitely at points debated buying one myself. But I think what's going to be interesting is, you kind of talked about this. What's it like during the bear market, right? Because I think during bull markets, the crazier the thing you're buying, typically the better that it can peak at. You're just playing a much more volatile game. It's almost leveraged, right? You're almost leveraged longing ETH when you buy an NFT. In a way, obviously it's a little bit different. So what are your thoughts on what's going to happen to these? Do you see these still maintaining that significance in the future? I mean, obviously there can only be 10,000. What are your thoughts? Or there only
so what I think is, I think if you, this is like, I don't want to be like a total shill or anything like that, but I think if you look through any project, like you look through, like, you know, you look at a hot project, you look at Solana or something like that, and you think like, if Solana is going down in price or whatnot, how much money do the people who believe in Solana have to go buy dips with, and, you know, things of that nature? And the punk maximalists are so fucking rich and not that all in punks kind of thing. Like most of these guys who really love punks, it's like, oh yeah, I have like $400 million of Ethereum. I don't mind investing like 3 million into rare heads or whatever. You know, it's just like, it really is kind of like a club of elites or whatnot, where, you know, the biggest buyers lately are mostly just the DraftKings owners. You know, it's like the biggest, it's like the guy who bought that alien recently, you know, he owns like, I don't know, $4 billion of DraftKings stock. You know, the CEO bought a zombie recently. One of the biggest collectors lately is one of the co-founders, that Matt Kalish is probably the guy who's bringing the most people to punks. Like last night, Steve Aoki bought his first punk or whatnot. And it's just like, you know, to me, it just feels like, you know, I like this expression. I think CMS was the guy who started it. Is like, it just seems like a hot ball of money that can't be stopped, where it's just, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, the people, you know, the higher the prices get, the more attractive it becomes to a higher and higher tier of people reputationally. Like if I saw these and they were $700, you know, early 2018 or something, I would probably have just been like, man, like I'm I'm running a few businesses. I'm a busy guy. I'm doing, it's like, yeah, these might go up, but like, I don't care kind of thing. And it's like they hit a point where I was just like, okay, I actually go and calculate what's the market cap to other similarly significant prices, etc. And just, and also I think I'm in a scenario where I feel like I know enough people that are, way wealthier than myself and know how they think about things, where I'm just like, well, what prices would this guy start getting attracted to them? What price will be that? At what point would such and such need to like panic sell his punks or whatnot? It just sort of made me realize that when these are almost undeniably the best NFTs, the prices should hit a point where I feel that, like, it seems like at some point they'll hit a point or price where I think, oh wow, those are too high. And who the hell is buying it? I think we're pretty far from those prices right now.
Just
Where
to
it's like
push,
it.
just to
Yeah,
push
sorry,
back
go
on
ahead.
that for a second. Well, I interrupted you. You don't have to say sorry. That was Canadian
Yeah.
of you, Mike. But just to push back on that for a second, it's not a question of are they best right now, right? It's a question of what's going to be the best in the future, and are these NFTs that are not yet out that could be different in whatever way, how will punks fare against those? I think that's really the question, because I don't think that there are people arguing. Punks is by far and away the most successful NFT at the moment. I mean, there have been different ones that have had moments, rare Pepe's, obviously crypto kitties. There's been moments, but currently today, nothing is even close to punks, I don't think.
So this okay, that's a good point you raise, and I'm largely this is less the case for elite punks. I think right now the aliens are the best NFTs, and that drives a lot of the value. I think if better if and or should I should say when better NFTs come out that are better than aliens, I think that hurts aliens and helps every other punk basically. And let's just say as an example, um, they NFT the Dallas Cowboys or something. And whoever owns this NFT owns the Dallas Cowboys, for instance. Like, that's better than an alien by a lot. And it's pretty cool. You can fractionalize it. You can vote on, new jerseys or whatever it is. But it's like you could have, clearly the Dallas Cowboys are going to be more valuable than an alien. And I think that
I see.
now that in some ways that hurts the aliens, because you can't be like, oh well, these are the best NFTs anymore. But then I think it helps punks, because it's like, well, now all of a sudden you have like a million Dallas Cowboys fans who are like, well, what the hell is this? He sold the team, and then investigating NFTs and be like, oh well, what are other interesting NFTs? Where I think the types of things that inevitably will be more valuable than the best punks draw attention to the NFT space and are like, holy shit, like, you have, I mean, let's just say hypothetically, you had, Trump threw out some lowball offer trying to buy Greenland or whatever. It's like, let's just say you NFT Greenland. It's like, okay, highest bidder, 1.5 trillion and it's yours or whatever. It's like, and it's like America can sell it to China or, whatever it happens to be. It's like
Bad
really
beat for
expensive.
Greenland. Bad beat.
It's like, it's just like, it's like an NFT just signifying the ownership of a non-digital asset is kind of like a very liquid environment for it to be transacted. So I think that almost by definition there will be ultra elite NFTs sold at some point. And so I think that for especially the non super elite punks, I think it's a positive. I don't think it's like some artist is, if some artist comes out who's so reputable that him making a series of avatars gets a very high price or whatnot, I think that the types of people who buy those may also come in and buy some punks, and the type of people who own punks won't be like, oh shit, like Banksy is making his project, I got to sell my punks. It's more, I think it's more just it ends up becoming a popular alternative. But I think in a lot of ways punks will always have a small to large, depending on the project, marketing pull from every other project kind of thing. And that's sort of my idea, is that they almost like signify the innovation. And that's kind of my thesis there. Not that they'll always be most valued, but that, and let's just say hypothetically the Banksy example that comes up. Banksy makes something that now surpasses punks in terms of market cap. Well, now someone else comes and makes another project, makes some $250 million market cap project, and you think, who's going to suck more of that project's customers between the Banksy NFTs versus punks? and I think punks will be the larger suck of liquidity, basically. So that's kind of my idea, is that everything that happens will, like, in the NFT space, will have some pull from other projects. And then, I mean, in bear markets, totally prices can go down, and they can go down plenty. But I guess the overall point is that the it's hard for them to go down. Like, a lot of these projects, they're dominated by people who are unit biased. They can't afford X, Y NFT, so they buy Y NFT. And when this project is already generally owned by people who are kind of owning the best ones, I think most people are just like, oh yeah, I'll chuck 1% of my net worth into these. It's there are very few people who are like, okay, like, I got 500K, let's buy a 500K punk. Oh no, it's down to 400K, I'm going to panic sell it for 300. It seems to very much be dominated by people. People don't panic sell their Bugattis or whatnot. It's like they're owned by people who already have too much money, more money than they know what to do with, for the most part. And I think bear markets will probably affect punk holders less than most altcoin markets. I would say probably I think punk holders will maybe be affected more than Ethereum holders, or yeah, probably more than Ethereum holders, more than Bitcoin holders, but I might argue less than any other cryptocurrency. There might be some weird ones like ETC, where these guys are all so principled. Like, ETC holders might be more diamond handed than even Bitcoin holders, kind of thing. But, like, ignoring weird things like Zcash or whatever, where of notable things, I think there are very few where people will be more prepared and more resilient in bear markets than I think punk holders will be.
Do you think that there is a strategy for someone that's considering buying a punk? What kind of jumps out at me is, it seems that there would be a lot of value on buying a floor punk, buying a punk that's the absolute bottom of the price, because then you're exposed to the market while paying the least you possibly can. And then what also seems to make some sense is buying the really elite ones, because when you're looking at this group of buyers that is not very price sensitive, anyone that's considering buying a $1 million NFT is not very price sensitive. That maybe there could be a lot more room for upside on those two. Do you think that middling punks have more value? Are there certain attributes that get some details here, Mike? Let's say that someone was going to buy a punk. Where's the value at?
Yeah, so it's interesting, where my kind of main thesis on punks has been playing out a fair bit, to where I'm not so sure it's a good thesis anymore. Where, say so there's 10,000 punks. When I got in, there were maybe 1,400 unique owners. So the average person owns 7 punks, and now I think there's 2,600. So the average owner owns under 4 punks. And I think something like 65% of people only own 1 punk. Most people buy 1. And I think it's just, I think 60% of punks are male, 40% are female, and I think I would guess probably low 90s% of buyers are males. So it's like in a when there was 100 users or a couple hundred users, it was okay. Females are scarcer than males, so females had a premium over males. But now when we're in an environment where most people have 1 punk, they're like, okay, I want a punk that looks like me. And when it's mostly guys, we've seen I would say the punks that have been performing the best the last few months, which I've been somewhat invested in, is just take a punk that just looks like an average guy. There's a couple haircuts that have 3% of people have a haircut that looks like that, but maybe 25% of people, I remember telling you about the peak spike punks, and you're saying everyone's already shielded because there's literally a haircut that looks exactly like your hair. But I would also, that's a haircut that in some ways I'm a little bit bearish on, because as punk holders get older and older, people start losing their hair starts getting grayer. Like, I used to spike my hair up, but maybe I stopped that in my, when I was 27 or something like that. And so I think that if, when we were all 22, maybe 15% of guys had kind of the Doug hair, and now maybe 1% of guys have the Doug hair kind of thing. So there's a little, there's a little bit to be said that the very just plain haircuts are, or just wearing a hat, not, there's maybe 6% of punks that wear like a hat that looks decent or something. Well, probably, especially as most guys are growing balding, probably more than 6% of people want to wear a hat kind of thing. So a lot of the things that are not rare but just kind of look like someone that you think might buy it has been a strategy that's played out pretty well. Now a lot of those, in some ways, those have already overperformed. I think what you're saying, investing in the floor is always pretty safe, because especially if you're not spending a lot of time on it. A lot of the punks, if the floor is 23 ETH right now, a lot of the ones you see listed at 40, some of them are only worth 23. To where, if you see something that's listed at 40 that is worth 40, then that's one thing. But probably the average punk that's listed at 40 is worth high 20s or something like that. So it takes a lot of time to sort of figure out the market sentiment on things that aren't on the floor. So I think
I guess it seems a lot easy. It's a lot harder to make a mistake buying a floor punk, because
it's a very safe approach, where it's kind of like it's kind of like playing poker. You can, against certain opponents you want to play offense, other ones you want to play defense, where it's like whether your mentality is, can I make as much as possible or can I lose as little as possible? The buying the floor is largely a can I lose as little as possible approach. And I think most kind of, like, if you're the type of person who, whatever, became a top 5,000 poker player or something like that, I think it's pretty likely, if you eat, sleep, breathe punks, you can be like smarter than the market within 2 weeks of obsessing over them or something, is about what I feel. Where, day one, you're probably going to be a fish. You might make some sort of mistakes. Like, let's say peak spike is something I was probably in punks for like 5 or 6 weeks before I realized, like, what, like, not a lot of people are buying peak spikes. And I was like, what, when I think of my, 40 people I know in punks, like how many gel their hair or whatnot, I'm like, oh, like 1 or 0 or something.
Oh, I'm under attack. Oh, I'm really
no,
under attack.
I'm not.
Ouch, Mike.
By no means, I'm not trying to. Your hair has gone from a more common haircut to a more niche haircut or something.
What am I to you?
Pardon me?
I'm
saying of the guys I know in punks.
Oh, okay.
Of the guys I know who are in punks.
I was gonna say,
like, half are bald, half are gray, So it's like, I think there's, and then also, a few types of beards. Like there's about 3 beards that look pretty cool, that are either A, what a lot of people's beard look like, or B, what a lot of people wish their beard looked like. I feel like for me, I do a little bit of projecting, where I really like the one luxurious beard is the name of it. And I think for me, I've never really been able to grow facial hair well. Same. Where I think it's kind of some form of like, oh, well, I wish I could grow a beard that looked luxurious. And so I think there's a little bit of that. We're just buying the punks that you can look at a punk and be like, oh, that looks like Bob, that looks like Joe. Several people that look like a punk. Those are often some of the best buys, because at some point, the punk that looks the most like you will look the most like someone else. Is kind of how it goes a little bit. So that would be the other thing, is literally just say a punk that either looks like you or looks like a large number of your friends is the market seems to be coming. People seem to be gobbling up all of the punks that look like real people, basically.
That's a good point. And now that I'm thinking about it, do I have any friends that gel or spike or anything in their hair? And I'm thinking the answer might be no. And now I'm questioning some things. Mike, you're bringing up some real deep questions about who am I really? Is it time to grow up and put on a t-shirt? These are things that I have to mull over now.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make this get so introspective.
It's good. I needed to develop and grow. I like the point you're making, though, that if it looks like someone, because when I look at punks, typically, like, oh, are the ones that look like me? What are they at? Oh, they're still more money than I thought would be reasonable for it. But I guess the upside also is, so one of the issues I have with it, actually, one of the biggest issues is that once you buy one of these, that money is out of play if you wanted to do any DeFi stuff. So what are your thoughts on that aspect of things? Is there such thing as a collateralized NFT site? Is that a thing that's in the works? Is that a thing that exists? Or once you have your punk, is it just sit on the sidelines now?
So I think I've heard of about 3 things that allow NFTs to be used as collateral. I think the first one was, I believe it's NiftX, I believe was the name of it, where what they do is they do loans against NFTs, where you basically have the lender has like a negotiation with I'll say why I'm laughing in a sec. The lender has a negotiation with the borrower, where you get a punk that's worth 200K, let's say, and you put it down and you guys lend out and you say, okay, I'll hold on to this punk and I'll lend you 50K, and the person's like, I want 80K. It's like, okay, 60K. You know, it's like you have this negotiation back and forth, and you decide, okay, I'll lend you 60K against this punk. You need to return the punk in 30 days for, you know, at 7% interest a year, or whatever the number is. And then if you don't return it to me by this time, now you own the 60K, I own the punk. Is how I think that Niftex works. And what I was laughing at, and one of the most evil ideas I've ever had, is my my friend and I, what we thought about doing is, because you can see people's ETH addresses, what we were thinking of doing is trying to find the overlap of people that are using the most dangerous farms and also involved in punks, and just give them zero interest loans. Just try to loan out money to people that I think are likely to get rugged. And I thought about this for a little bit, and then I'm like, I was like, okay, that's just like, you know, kind of
That's a loan shark.
Yeah, they basically loan that would be something maybe an A+ capitalist would do. But I looked at, I think it was Niftex was the platform, and didn't do that. Someone else recently launched collateralized NFTs. I can't remember who it was. And then, actually, there's a couple other things I should. Then the other one is Aave has said they have it in the works. Like, I mean, I would probably just say, you know, if Aave or Compound or Maker or whatnot gets it to work, I'd probably just blindly trust one of those three instead of, you know, some like $5 million market cap like that, you know, you specifically seek out to put your, you know, 6-figure NFT on and hope, you know, all the like genius hackers out there, they've all tried to break Aave, but they haven't tried to break, a lot of them probably don't even know Niftex exists or whatnot. Right. So it's just like, I don't like being the guinea pig on things. And the other thing is, the site Fractional launched recently, where basically you can fractionalize NFTs. So you could hypothetically go buy a punk for 30 ETH and then sell off shares of that punk, you know, 1% for 0.3 ETH, or you can charge a premium if you want, charge 0.4 ETH or whatnot. I think that's a big part of the punk rally recently, is that people can go buy punks and then sell them off to people. I think with sports cards, that's been a big factor in them rallying so much, is fractionalizing the cards. So I think people are kind of having the same thesis here. But basically, so if you, I don't know exactly how Fractional works, but I'm assuming it kind of works the form. You park your NFT there, you sell the shares to people, and now you can own that ETH and go yield farm with that ETH. So, you know, I don't know for sure. I don't know if it gets like locked in the contract or whatnot, but my default assumption would be that kind of now that ETH is yours until you want to go, you know, reclaim the punk or whatever. So I think that's one way that, I mean, then you don't have as much equity. Like if you sell off 15 ETH in shares, you only own 15 ETH of a punk, but it would have the liquidity on the other 15 ETH kind of thing. So anyway, those would be, so it seems like the industry is moving in a direction of NFTs being able to be used as collateral. I definitely can tell you that the more aggressive they get with this, the more exploits they're going to be. Like, I'm sure that someone's going to create an NFT project purely just to wash trade it, pay a bunch of bots to act like community members in Discord, just rally something up until it's an insane market cap, lend out all the tokens, and just never pay the loans back because, you know, there were no real buyers. You know, I'm sure that there will be examples of people who are kind of too trusting of prices of valuations and get really you know, yeah, people are definitely going to lose on these lending platforms where people trust market rates too much, I think, and give too much lent against too little collateral. So that's, yeah.
What do you think about fractional NFTs? Because when I've heard that, I would think that it would suffer from the same thing that I think Bitcoin suffers from today, which is just the idea of not owning the whole thing is something I think is a little bit hard for people. I mean, I think it's hard for me to imagine owning part of a thing. Not only am I buying a picture on the internet, just thinking about how the common person might look at this, I'm buying a picture on the internet that I own a 15th of. Are people really willing to do that? Is that going to be a thing, do you think?
So I mean, I've seen a lot of, you know, DAOs that have been buying NFTs where you get, you know, 10 or 100 people, you know, pooling money to go buy from a DAO. You know, I know that you know when the Doge NFT sold, did you see that or no?
You know, no, I didn't.
Okay, so you know the picture of the Doge that everyone associates it with. It's like, you know, that is, you know, a lady's dog who recently sold an NFT, basically saying, hey, I'm selling one NFT from, like, my dog is the one that sparked all the Doge memes. I'm selling one NFT of this, and it sold for I think $3 or $4 million or whatnot.
Good move.
Yeah, exactly. She gave it all to charity, I think. And basically, bad move. No, I'm kidding.
There he is. And Mike just moved up to being an A capitalist. One more move, you're in the A plus territory.
No, but basically, I think a DAO purchased that, and I think DAOs have been purchasing more of the elite NFTs, where it's just like it's a lot easier to get, people each putting in, a share of these things. It's easier to, pool a couple $1 million than it is to have one guy, pull the trigger himself, kind of thing. So I think on either things that are one of one or kind of elite tier in sets, like if you're buying a zombie or an ape or something like that, it's much easier to be like, it's much easier to feel excited owning 1% of an ape than like 1% of a floor punk, I think, or even 30% of a floor punk. To a lot of people doesn't seem that exciting. So I think with things that are more unique, buying a Beeple, buying an X copy, buying many of these NFT artists, I think owning a part of that feels better to people than owning a part of a set of 10,000, I think, and especially a set of 10,000 where it's like so many people are using these as avatars, as their online persona, things of that nature. I think that I can see how fractionals work better for things that aren't punks. I think I've definitely found this with, I found this out with some friends, where with some friends of mine and I, it's like a friend wants to buy half a punk, or a friend and I were talking punks all the time, where we have similar thoughts and we end up chopping a bunch of punks or whatnot. And you sort of, at some point you sort of realize like, hey, it kind of feels better to be like, I own 100% of one punk than 33% of three punks, kind of thing. So I do largely agree with that sentiment. And we've had this this sort of punk index for a while, where it's been very low volume. It's been an ability to buy fractional floor punks, especially if a floor was 20 ETH, you can buy 0.1 floors for 2 ETH, and then you can sell it when the floor price rallies. And so we've had that for a while, but it hasn't been that popular. And I think for the exact reasons that you bring up, that I think it is. I think a lot of people, I think that's a lot of the success as you go down to different avatar projects. There's 3 dozen of them by now, maybe more. I think a lot of people they like this idea of, okay, punks are too expensive, I like the idea of getting an ape. Okay, apes are too expensive, I'll go get a kennel dog. Okay, kennel dogs are too expensive, I'll go get a wicked cranium. And then also a lot of people, different people like being big fish in small ponds or small fish in big ponds, where I think a lot of people, they think, okay, I could own a floor punk, or I could go own, a 95th percentile Bored Ape, or I could go own the best avatar in some more obscure avatar project, something that's a 1 million market cap. You can spend 40K and own the best thing out of 10,000, or things of that nature, where I think a lot of people like this idea. You can hop into a Discord, maybe instead of it being a Discord with thousands of people trading these, maybe dozens or hundreds, but you can hop in and it's like, oh, like our king is here or whatnot, like you hop in. It's a lot of people like the big fish small pond mentality in NFTs, where you own the most epic one in a small project. So there are, I think that very much goes against the idea of fractionalization, where you could own 1% of an ape, or you could own the best or a top 5 in a collection of 10,000. So there's a lot of different approaches that people have to these things, and it's I'm the only NFTs I own are punks, to where I don't know that much about all the other projects. And I think, as you mentioned, like often it's the lower market caps that will pump harder, but I also think it's like, hey, in a bear market, I think a lot of these projects, I've seen how crypto discords die off in bear markets, and a lot of these smaller market caps with strong communities, I think it's very easy that a lot of people will just get out of crypto, or they'll start, they'll find a new project that's more hyped, or whatever it happens to be. I think it's a little more defensive owning NFTs that have already been through a multi-year bear market.
I agree with that. Let's talk about the actual top value NFTs for a moment, because I think that's worthy of its own conversation. We talk about aliens a little bit. We've talked about potentially Greenland. You could buy it. I want to, I guess, ask a couple of different questions. But my first question is, when you talked earlier about aliens losing a lot of value, if, for example, the Dallas Cowboys became an NFT, basically my question is, Do you think there's going to be some kind of premium on the most valuable NFT, the number one most valuable NFT? Do you think that there will be a premium on its value? And then my other question here is for the idea of an NFT representing real life ownership, aren't there some kind of big problems with that? Like, for example, you lose it, you lose ability to access it, potentially theft. I mean, that's always, of course, an issue for all of this. Maybe that's not an important one, but what if you lose access to being able to move Greenland? Now, is that just forever owned by someone that can't even verify that they own Greenland? Who owns Greenland now? So I guess my question there would be, what do you think about the idea of a token representing real world ownership in terms of the actual logistics? Because we talked a bit about this one-on-one a few weeks back where you saw this kind of stuff becoming more popular. What are those logistics like?
Yeah, I mean the main logistics are just totally outside the scope of crypto, I suppose. And I think a lot of people do sort of forget this. They're kind of like, yes, this code is censorship resistant, but that doesn't mean you aren't breaking a host of laws. That doesn't mean that, no legal system would ever enforce, the fact that no one gave you Greenland or whatnot. It's very, there's definitely a myriad of other problems where I think a lot of these NFTs with with a physical thing attached to them, it's kind of like it's more than just the physical thing attached, it's the sender's reputation attached, where it's like, hey, I can, if I want to whatever sell a poker shares hoodie NFT, yes, I could just sell you this NFT and not send you the hoodie, but you're also kind of getting my reputation in that you expect me to not screw you over and not send you the hoodie. But now if I sell this to you, and now or let's say I sell this to someone unknown. I've already attacked your hair. I don't want to attack your morals. So let's send this to someone unknown, and then now they want to sell this. Now they want to sell this NFT to someone else. All they're buying is literally the physical NFT, where this person may not have this reputation of trustworthiness associated. Where you might buy this NFT and you're like, yes, like this hoodie looks so comfortable. It's the right colors. It's just my size. I only paid $39. This was a nice dip to buy, and then the hoodie never arrives. It's just like, it's really with a lot of these physical things, there really is, and then what do you do? Like, you don't even know where the buyer is, what country he's located in. You don't know his, I don't think you even know his IP address. It's just, it's very, with a lot of these things, when there is no sort of reputation from the seller, there is, nothing enforceable about what's going on. You could reach out to the centralized exchanges and be like, this guy owes me a hoodie. Like, if he puts money onto your exchange, like, steal it from him. Or, there are ways you can try to do some form of central enforcement, but I don't think that one's going to pan out. So yeah, I mean, it is definitely a concern, where I think that one of the biggest use cases for these physical NFTs right now is more just access to quick liquidity, which I think is something, the people that are, the people who always say, right click save or whatnot, those types of people, that is one of the strongest arguments they have going in their favor, is that, I think a lot of the people that are accessing the NFT space right now, it's more of a cash grab for them than it is, a strong belief. And I don't think that a lot of them care if their community is strong in 6 months, 5 years, etc. To where I think that yeah, I mean, I think that is definitely a problem with, NFTs in general, but especially NFTs with a physical component. Maybe we end up in some maybe we end up in some environment where there is you have like a quite centralized blockchain. Like, I don't think Ethereum really is the right blockchain for NFTs. Like, I think for a lot of things within NFTs, you want a more centralized blockchain where, let's just say after an NFT sale, maybe something along the lines of, it needs to be, your money needs to be routed through one of a few locations to be cashed out, or money is even held in escrow on like a blockchain escrow until the seller confirms they've received the physical item. There's definitely, I find this way with things like Uniswap and whatnot. Like, I don't think Uniswap is the perfect type of DEX. I think it was basically a DEX that was built for Ethereum's limitations. I don't think it was, I think if someone was building a system for decentralized trading, they wouldn't build Ethereum. And I think this would happen with, NFTs as well, where if you were to build something for trading Greenland in a decentralized fashion, you wouldn't do it on Ethereum kind of. And so I think that, I don't know what those will look like. I haven't used Theta or Flow or, any of these kind of NFT specific blockchains. I honestly haven't researched them at all, but I think that I think there will be certain things you can add to a blockchain, like, the ability to roll back certain transactions in certain environments, I think could be helpful. Things of that nature may be necessary for certain types of NFTs. And, I think that, yeah, I mean, I think I'm not, and by no means saying like, Ethereum is bad or anything. I'm just saying that, certain things that are trying to be done on Ethereum, I don't think it's the best means for them, I guess. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
There's always going to be trade-offs with security versus centralization and scalability, right? That's kind of the name of the game. So
Yeah.
I don't think Ethereum was built with NFTs in mind. I think it kind of came as it developed. So
especially not 10 figure, or in Greenland's case, like 13 figure NFTs or whatever.
How much is Greenland worth?
I mean, I remember thinking about this, and it's like, whatever, whoever buys it would get a deal is like whatever, like, let's just say hypothetically it's worth, if a fair price is like 10 trillion, it probably sells for like half a trillion or something. Like I in my head, I would probably think if Greenland were to sell, it would sell for like 1 to 3 trillion or something like that. But in practice, it likely should be worth more when it's, it's not as big as it looks on maps, but it still is a decent chunk of the land in North America and Europe kind of thing. And it's, and it's like owning, if you just want, if America wanted to buy up a province or Canada wanted to buy up a state or something, it's like, it would be fucking expensive, so it's very, yeah, I mean, whatever the number is, I forget if Trump said 100 billion or something, whatever it is, it would be a bit of a low ball, I think.
It is funny with maps how they get stretched towards the extremes. It makes them look much bigger than they actually are. So yeah. Okay, but going back to talking about the most exclusive NFTs, the tip of the iceberg, basically, I like the point that you made that basically one of the things that aliens have going for them right now is that they're the most expensive NFT. It's the most scarce NFT it's the most scarce piece or token on the most valuable network or most valuable, however you want to phrase this. What happens when there are more valuable NFTs available? Does that hurt aliens, or what do you think about aliens in general? What do you think about peak values for these types of things, and what do you see being some of the things to consider around that?
Yeah. So did you see the Tim Berners-Lee NFT or no?
No, what was that?
So it's like the NFT of the World Wide Web. Like he basically took his code for, writing the World Wide Web and sold that as an NFT. Where it's like, as far as things that are relevant to the internet go, that's a pretty big one basically. And so the one thing that's kind of, rough about that one is whatever kind of artist transposed it or whatnot, they messed up certain types of characters to where like whatever language he wrote it in appeared different than it does here. So like, the copy you get actually has some mistakes in it, which is pretty rough. Like, the code wouldn't compile basically. And then, but I think that sold for about 5 million or so, where it's like, I think it's totally like, that's something, I mean, this is something that you can definitely debate is like, if you NFT things that have happened in the past, like, like, where do you draw the line? Like, can the moon landing be NFT? Like, can America becoming a country be NFT? Like, it's very weird as far as, the line that you can build about NFTing something that's historically significant. And then if you deem this isn't historically significant, let's just say he built this NFT when he created the World Wide Web and then sold it 25 years later, or gave it away to someone who sold it 25 years later, I think that would then be much more significant, to where I think events that happen now that end up being the equivalent of the moon landing or the equivalent of the World Wide Web that were NFT'd in real time, that end up becoming the things that define our reality in 10 years, 50 years, could easily be the best NFTs. But anyways, what I was going to say is that something like that World Wide Web NFT, I think you can make a strong case for that being, at alien level or even above alien level kind of thing, where it is, it's a fucking World Wide Web kind of thing. There aren't many things that are more important in our era, I suppose. So I guess in that regard, and then things that are kind of one of one end up becoming, less liquid. If an amazing painter only ever made one painting, it may not accrue the same value as an amazing painter who made 20 paintings, because those 20 paintings, you can constantly have trades that establish higher value, higher prices. Whereas the one of one, it may not get that worldwide acclaim of, every 18 months there's a headline that a new one sold for a record price kind of thing. So, that's something that certain NFTs that are true one of ones can have working against them, is that they have nothing to kind of establish price or value, I suppose. But yeah, I think that going back to it, like as far as what top NFTs can be worth, I think that I guess kind of the answer is it depends. Like, the Honus Wagner that's owned by the guy who owns the Diamondbacks. I think if that sold, I think that would be interesting. Where that's just kind of undeniably the best card. I think right now that Mike Trout card is the highest selling card. But if whatever the
Sorry, card? Are we talking about? We're talking about baseball cards.
Baseball cards, yeah.
Okay.
The Honus Wagners all sell for like a couple millions or a couple million, but I think some Mike Trout one of one sold for like 4 or 6 million. But like there's one Honus Wagner that's deemed the best. Like when it comes to card grading, it's the only one that's in like modern era levels of grading. Everything else is graded quite poorly. And so if the best baseball card went to auction, it's kind of, you don't know what that sells for, where it's like, probably it sells for a lot more than anyone thinks it sells for. Like if people think it's going to sell for 20 million, it might sell for 400. You don't, like, when every single person knows what the best baseball card on earth is, it just comes down to like whatever, Jeff Bezos is willing to, outbid Bill Gates on it, or, like when something is undeniably the best, it's really hard to price it. And then whoever comes second place in that auction knows they can never get it again, kind of thing, where it's a weird dynamic when things are the best, I guess. So it's just like, no one's, I don't think a top baseball card, like even like a top 5 baseball card has sold in recent years or whatnot, or in very few, top 50 cards even sell kind of. So it's really tough these things all have like power law distribution.
Is it that specific baseball card? I have no knowledge of baseball cards. So is it that specific? It's kind of known which the best 50 baseball cards are in what order?
Yeah, so I could. So I'm not a card collector. I've just spoken to people that are. But basically, so the story behind the Honus Wagner card is, people don't know exactly why, but his run of cards stopped prematurely. Some people suggest like he just didn't want, like, they used to sell them on cigarette packets, and people suggest that he was anti-smoking before anyone else was anti-smoking, or there's a few explanations for why his card it's such low print. But even if you look at like historical magazines, from whatever the 1940s or whatever, when every card was a penny, he was already like $5 for that card or whatnot. There's something like 60 of them in existence, and this is before card collecting was a thing anyone did for a living. So everyone just like kept them in a stack of cards. So no card was held in like plastic sleeves or anything like that. Like I don't know when plastic sleeves were invented, but they're probably a lot newer than that card. So if there's like 50 or 60 of those cards out there, when they grade cards from 1 to 10, I'm sure you always see a Jordan 10 sold, a Jordan 8 sold, things like that. The best one is just a 7, and I think no other one is better than a 4 out of 10 by modern grading standards. Most of these I think are just like, it's like a letter, like a B for bad, or something like that. Like most of these are just in bad condition, and then the ones that are that get a number grading are worth several million, and then this one is just so clearly the best, where it's just like, and the guy who owns it, he owns an MLB team as well, where it's just like, how the fuck do you ever buy this off? Like if it were placed at auction, probably he just buys it. It's just like if he'd probably be like, well, fuck, like I've built my identity around this baseball card. It's just like when something's the best, it's just worth whatever someone values it at. And then the same goes for artwork. It's like I've had this discussion with artwork as well, where I think that I think I think there's, in my mind, there are four big pieces of art. And I would say from kind of like worst to best, I would probably go like number four, Statue of David, number three, Mona Lisa, number two, Christ the Redeemer, number one, Statue of Liberty. And I would just say, like, if Statue of Liberty went, like, let's say America, people talk about America breaking into three Americas. If America broke into a few different Americas and there was a bidding war to see who gets to keep the Statue of Liberty, like, what the fuck does it sell for, kind of thing? Like, it would be so outrageous. The bidding, like, literally every new America is printing as much money as they can to keep the Statue of Liberty in their America. Like, what do these things sell for when something is the best? And it's really tough to price because, like, money is all fake, especially when the people that can bid on these things all have more than they'll ever need, kind of thing. So it's just like, it's really tough to price things that are the best. But I think that's why NFTs have grown so high in prices, where whoever bought the World Wide Web NFT, whoever bought various aliens, whoever bought the Doge NFT, various of these ones, people, and whoever bought the Beeple 5,000 days, the people who look at those NFTs are just thinking like, hey, this could be the Mona Lisa of digital assets, I suppose. And whatever, some of them will be right, some of them will be wrong, but it's just like the prices that, when I think when people look at someone paying $1 million for an NFT, I think they're often thinking, well, oh, I could have bought a house for that, or I could have bought a Bugatti for that, things like that. They're not thinking like, okay, this person already has $10 billion and already
Right.
has 7 Bugattis and already has a $200 million penthouse or whatever, and then thinking like they're bidding against someone else like them, and where do you stop, kind of thing. So it's like that's kind of, when there's consensus on what things are the best, it's just like, it's tough to price these things. And so it goes beyond the scope. Like, I would argue that I haven't seen something that's the best sell. It's like I haven't, whatever's the highest selling painting of all time is probably like the 75th best work of art. Or, it's not like a top, all the best art is all in, fancy European museums and things like that. Like, you never see like the 20th best artwork or the number one sell or anything. So it's like, it's really tough. Like, literally these things are at a spot where, oh, you can't put a price on the Mona Lisa or whatnot until you do. And whatever that price is becomes fucking disgusting, kind of. So that's kind of where I think people are at with a lot of these things. Where once some kind of billionaire who loves it has it, he's not trying to trade it to like triple his money or something. He just holds it for like forever, kind of thing.
These are the ultimate blend of scarcity and significance. These are things that have the most significance, and they are only one. That's the ultimate blend. I've never thought about the Statue of Liberty being artwork, but I guess it is. I guess that does make sense.
I mean, and it's like the significance it has. It's not like someone goes and sees a little rust on it and they're like, worthless. Like, I would have removed that rust. It's like a big statement for what America is, I suppose. And it's very it's something where, like, again, if America were to split, which could easily happen in our lifetime, someone's gonna get it, kind of thing.
Wait, hold on.
And
Can we hone in on that sentence? You think that could easily happen in our lifetime?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, say, okay, we've been in a pretty peaceful time overall our lifetime. And if you were to look at the list of countries that existed when we were born and the list of countries that exist right now, like, something like only, I don't know, 65 or 70% of European countries existed when we were kids. They've all been, it's like Yugoslavia splits into 6 countries. It's like there's so many of these things that just change. And it's just the ideologies in America are not, they're not in agreement. And I think it's every couple of years that passes, I think America becomes less cohesive. And I don't really see that trend continuing, where I think a lot of people could end up in a situation where, I think you could easily end up in a situation where what people, the group of people that I identify with is not, totally, if you're, I don't think, going from, California to Texas or whatnot, I don't think everyone has the same kind of, world ideals for, how a country should be run, how people should be organized. And, I think I think that we're still seeing, I think we're still very much seeing the effects of like what the internet can do. And I think we're still pretty early on how the internet will change our lives. And yeah, I just think it, we're also, we're going to be alive a long time, knock on wood, but yeah, so I think it's just, I think it's something like a lot of people think that just because something hasn't happened recently that it won't happen or whatnot. But I think that, it seems somewhat likely that, I don't know, people want to move in different directions.
There have been a lot of changes in the countries of the world, but going back to your stat on that, how many of those are first world capitalist countries that have had changes? Because I don't think there have been any major changes to those countries that I could think. I mean, the closest thing I could think of is Scotland every now and then gets a little testy.
But I mean, I think that's also just like if you look at world superpowers, Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. Like all the countries around Soviet Union, I forget.
Yeah,
what
but that's
year.
not capitalist.
But no, but what I'm saying is there's no guarantee capitalism wins. It's like capitalism's whatever winning right now, but it's just like it's so easy. It's so easy for China to just be 3 times as powerful as America in 25 years, and just kind of like the way America kind of dominated the world 15 years ago or whatnot. It's easy for China to dominate the world with the same dominance 15 years from now, kind of thing. Where it's like we had a one superpower world for so long, and it's definitely not that way. And the direction it's going, I don't really. It's hard to see how America keeps getting market share, I suppose. Where it's so easy to see how China keeps getting market share. I don't know.
We have a very U.S. centric viewpoint in the world here in America, and we take a lot of things for granted. Like, for example, the dollar will always be the dollar. I've talked to that with normal people, and yeah, that's cool. Very nice of you to mention that. It's a good point you make. And then meanwhile, their investment strategy is money in their savings. You know what I'm saying? It's
own a negative amount of dollars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
I mean, most people do not own in poker you generally need dollars that you can play games, but like most people, our age range, risk portfolios, etc., own a zero or sub-zero amount of dollars, kind of thing. Like it's just anything you can to own assets is how I think a large number of people do invest and get your dollars into some sort of investment as quick as you can, kind of.
You're a man that's known to occasionally set some lines. What would you set the line on in our life? Let's assume we live average life expectancy. America splits into multiple countries, or at least 2 countries. What would you set the line?
So I mean, I think there's other variants of America not existing. Like, I think it's totally possible that, like countries aren't geographically based within our lifetime. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can be governed by an algorithm or something like that. I think that
the punks might have gotten to you, Mike.
I think it's probably and let's just say next 60 years, if you say what are the chances that America exists in its current form 60 years from now, I'd say about 50-50.
Wow, that's strong.
It's kind of what I would say.
And that's
maybe 60% or something, but I think it's hard to imagine how it could be like 75%. I think
75% to stay together. You're saying?
Yeah, like I think it feels like maybe half or a little under half to have some form of reorganization.
I could certainly see states changing, especially I think California is the one you think about most, because California, it's the most populated state. It's the state with the biggest economy, and then it also has such various regions, right? You have the inland areas, which are more agricultural. You have the tech center in the Bay Area. You have you have LA, you have San Diego, you've got Northern California, which feels a lot more like Oregon. You have the desert areas in the Southeast. It's just got so many different areas, and they're all also culturally quite different. You have the OC when compared to LA, it's a very different area. It's a lot more conservative. So that one I could certainly see happening in some capacity. But the other problem is when you split up, you kind of reduce your power. And one thing about institutions is they tend to not like reducing their power in any capacity. And that makes me a little bit hopeful on the ability for them to stick together. But it doesn't really make sense for people in the inland empire of California to have laws being voted on by people in Santa Monica. This doesn't really make sense. These are such different areas. Why do they have the same rules applied to them? And I guess you could make that same argument at the federal level. And maybe this is just a general argument against a lot of regulation at the federal level, because when you try and make laws for 350 million people, or however many million people we have in America at the moment, you start to get very inefficient because you're making rules for people in very different places. And that's why I think that the government has consistently overstepped its sort of what its boundaries should be in what it's allowed to do, and continuously increases in power when it shouldn't. Both parties. That's not even just the left does that. They both do that. They do it in different ways. And I actually, one of the things I used to really like about the right was that they at least would kind of fight back against big government. But now everyone's just big government. It's just everyone's pro big government because that's them, and they want more power, and they want to be relevant, and they want to have, people don't like to let go of power, basically.
Yeah, no, it is like, I mean, it is, I mean, I'll offend a lot of people when I say this, but I think that whether you are, left-wing politics or right-wing politics, a lot of the things that you hate about the other side are probably just as true about your side, kind of thing, where I think there is a lot of I think that it's a little, I always think of like the Kang and Kodos thing in The Simpsons, where I think there's a lot more similarities between the motives of people in power, regardless of like what they say in speeches or whatnot.
The incentives are just not correct. You're incentivized to do what's best for you, when what is necessary is what's best for everyone. And I don't know how you fix that incentive structure, but certainly term limits in Congress, I think, would help. But there needs to be some kind of shift in people being incentivized to do the right thing. And I think about it with the way that America spends money, or how aggressive America has been willing to pump out more money to combat COVID, way past the point of which we got back to before COVID. Because it's pretty easy to be the guy that says, hey, let's fix everyone's problems, vote for me, I'll spend. It's pretty hard to be the guy that says, you guys are not going to want to hear this, but we're going to do a round and everyone eats their broccoli in America next year. That guy, no one wants to be that guy. Good luck winning as that guy.
Yeah, no, and it is just like, it's a bit strange, I suppose. This kind of goes into my idea of how, what A+ capitalism is or whatnot, where everyone has this fundamental idea, especially 2019 or earlier, that like a dollar is good and valued, and that you should value your wealth in amount of dollars rather than in amount of purchasing power or whatnot, especially purchasing power in other countries or whatnot. And I think that, and Trump built so much of his, popularity, voting base, etc., off of, look how much the Dow is up, kind of thing. Like, look at, gets in there saying this stock's up so much, this stock's up so much. It's like, hey, it's like he did things that were good for asset valuations. And that's something that, the median voter does believe in and does believe is important. And if you come forth and then you think like, okay, we're gonna have the stock market break even for 4 years, your wealth will be growing, but your dollars will be shrinking, is a much less attractive thing than your dollars will be growing, but your wealth will be shrinking, because it's much harder to track like what your wealth is than what your number of dollars is, I guess. And so it's a very, when you have this like every 4 years cycle of like, how can I, convince people they're all going to make more dollars or whatnot, it's a very fucked up game, where it needs that all the people in power are incentivized to create those same sort of problems I was saying, where it's like you just try to get valuations up, you don't care about profit, you don't care about anything beside asset valuations, and it makes me just very skeptical of everything, I suppose.
So does one floor punk equal one floor punk, or?
I mean, it does, and thank God. Dan Smith burnt a floor punk, so now one floor punk equals 1.0001 floor punks.
How did that happen?
So there's been there's been 4 punks that have been destroyed. Um, one of them I don't know the story behind. Two of them were basically of the form like, I'm so rich I can burn a punk to make you guys think I'm cool.
Wow.
Like the very
Wow.
I don't understand. But what happened with Dan is a friend of his, bought a punk for him or whatnot, and he sent the guy the wrong address. I think he sent an address that was too short, and the way Ethereum works is that they default, if it's supposed to be whatever 40 characters and you only send 36 characters, they default to adding 4 characters that are all zeros. And then when his friend was sending, didn't notice that message, and
Oh,
then
this is really
literally
horrible. What? How
really
does someone make that mistake? How long ago
really
was
just
this?
5 months maybe.
Oh
Just send a
man.
punk send a punk into the abyss.
Oh, that
so,
is
so,
horrible.
so actually, one floor punk is more than one floor punk. You think you have 1 out of 10,000 scarcity, but you have one of 9,996. So it's even better.
Did
It's like dollars they keep printing. Punks. People who make errors keep destroying.
did Dan then burn another one? Because I know he likes the double up, so that could have been a nice option for him there.
Not yet, but I wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Going back to the we were talking about Trump and asset prices. I had a trader friend, and we were talking a little bit about this a couple years back, and he said it's really interesting because I don't think we've ever had a president who cared more about the stock market going up, and that can be good for you if you own assets, right? You're happy to see this, but also it's kind of bad for people that he wakes up and, can we get the stock market to go up today? He said it was a very unique trading time. You don't see this very often.
No, it's very, and it's also something that's worth noting is like, I don't know, let's just say, I don't know what the number is, but let's just say of American wealth, 25% of that is denominated in stocks. Um, if you have 20% of your net worth in stocks and stock prices are going up, like you're getting poorer kind of thing. Like, you're getting, your neighbors are all outperforming you kind of thing, where it's like, if you're you're whatever, when it comes down to how assets get purchased, okay, everything went up more because everyone can afford to pay it or whatnot. Whereas if if you own less of an asset than like your market share or whatnot, you're short basically. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize this, where if they have a small investment portfolio, but their net worth is 1% that of the average American or something, 5% that of the average American, they can be excited to see that their stocks are going up. But all that really means is that when they're out of student debt, and when they're later on in their careers where they can now afford to own more assets, that the assets will be so high priced that they can't afford to own the fair number of shares that their older siblings or that their parents, their grandparents were able to purchase with the same amount of labor committed to it. It's like a very fucked up thing of like, it's this, oh, the stock market should be high, is just like, hey, the haves should be pulling away from the have-nots even further, kind of.
Right.
And
That's a good point.
it's very, yeah, it's a very it's everyone kind of feels like we're all in this together, like our balances are all green, but it means people with like a smaller balance than they would intend to earn during their career and during their lifetime are just getting front run by everyone else by driving prices to a level that they can't afford the amount of ownership that their job is, whatever their job happens to be, what that they can't purchase the share that they
That's a
should
great
be able
point.
to.
Yeah, if your buying power is decreasing relative, or rather, if your amount of money that you have is increasing is increasing less than everyone else's, then you're actually getting poorer relative to all the other people. So it
Yeah.
really, and you can see this at play with all the stimulus checks. I think I heard what's his name, Stanley Druckenmiller.
Yeah.
He did the speech to USC. Did you see that? It was a few months back.
Yeah. Yeah.
He made a comment where a lot of the people on the left are excited. We're getting people the money, and they're all excited. They're trying to help the poor. But the reality is, where do you think all those checks are ending up, and what's that going to do to the wealth gap? And realistically, the people that are getting the money, they need to spend it. They spend it. Who gets the money when they spend it? It ends up just ending up back with the people that you're trying to not help specifically by not giving them checks if you're over whatever amount of income, which is interesting to think about.
Exactly. The people who have the least money, the only times when they get excess money are at times when the market is such a bubble that they're almost inevitably going to lose, kind of thing. It's very, it's very, yeah. I mean, it's just like as soon as stimulus checks get announced, all the savvy traders go and get their buys in to front run the $1,200 stimmy pump or whatnot. And then when everyone gets their stimmies, it's like the markets are already pumped to a price that you're the exit liquidity for the people that had the money and knew exactly what you were going to do with it.
Interesting. I didn't know that was happening, but that also makes sense. Let's wrap this up on something light. So how do we fix the world economic system?
I don't know. The answer is probably not Bitcoin, but that's maybe one of the I don't know, one of the less bad options. Like I feel like Bitcoin. Bitcoin probably just adds to a lot of the problems, but it seems like this. It seems to me like the best asset to make yourself a have rather than a have not, I suppose. It's sort of piling on to I think it's all kind of piling on to the problem and kind of building a bigger gap between capital and labor, I suppose. But it's just I just feel, I don't know, I kind of feel like I don't like having many assets that are denominated in my case Canadian dollars or yours American dollars. Like I like something that is global, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. It's like I don't think, I think everyone.
I appreciate that you actually tried to answer that. That was nice of you.
Yeah. I really hate this thing of like, it pisses me off about Bitcoiners, I suppose. And I don't know if people believe it or not, but I think a lot of people have this sort of, they get out there and they say like, oh, the current system is broken, so buy Bitcoin. Jack's up there saying, oh, buy Bitcoin so we can have world peace or whatnot, after I've like filled my bags or whatnot. Where it's just like, it's very, I don't know, it feels very like I think it's a better system than the current system, but I also, I don't think, I think that most people's goals in saying like the positive ethical things behind why you should own cryptocurrencies, I think has less to do with actually believing those things and more to do with like, hey, that's how marketing works in 2021, is try to pitch someone, if you do XYZ, you're a good person, so do this good thing so you can make me money. Like I think that's the main goal that most Bitcoiners and people in the cryptocurrency space have, and I don't really want to contribute to that. Where I'm like a lot, I think it's a better system, but I'm not even that confident it's a better system. I
think being transparent with your position and honest about what you think, even if it will make you money if people take the action, well, at least they know that that's your perspective. I think that it's more fair than to give the impression that you're saying this because it's the right thing to do, but the reality is it's because you own the position. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. I think a lot of people,
transparency.
They are very and it's such a status quo thing or whatnot, where I guess sort of my belief, when you were talking about positions of power, but I've thought about this a little bit, where when I see something that I think is a good investment, I think it's good to basically have a multi-decade long track record of, hey, if I do something that's like a better decision than average, I encourage other people to do things that are a better decision than average. Like over enough years and decades, the people that I associate myself with will on average have more wealth, power, influence than the average share. And I don't know what will be the goal of me and Doug becoming really rich, but it feels like we'll probably be better than the average person with wealth and power. I have no idea if my group of friends, my generation, my era will be more corrupt than the people currently in power. But I just sort of have this idea, hey, if I can do things that I think will make the people around me money, like that will probably pay, or it could possibly pay dividends at some point. I don't know how, but maybe if it ever comes time to try, someone comes up with a solution that I think is good. Well, if I've given people good predictions and good investments for 25 years or whatnot, okay, well, maybe they're more likely to listen when I have my thesis on how we should split up America.
They'll probably be more receptive. But I was thinking, if things go particularly well, we should get our own area that we could all just hang out. Something like a nice Greenland would be a good spot. We could post up, could change the name.
NFT it. I'll trade a couple of my punks for your
Fractionalized
territory.
Greenland.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
that makes sense. Mike, thank you for coming on today. I appreciate it. It's always good talking to you. Thanks for some of the takes. Very interesting perspective. And yeah, thank you for everything today.
Yeah, it's been good chatting. A wide variety of topics today. It was fun.
That's going to be a wrap here at the Doug Polk Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Once again, if you are not followed or subscribed, make sure to hit that button so you don't miss when new episodes go live, and show some support for the content that we're pumping out over here at Polk News Productions. That's going to be it, guys. I will see you guys again next week. Maybe the Phil Hellmuth episode. Not entirely sure the order that's going to go down in, but at some point Phil will be joining the podcast. Either way, I'll see you again in the near future. Thanks for joining today.